So we're live and been probably now.
Well, yeah, I think we are going to be live because last time that's kind of what happened.
It is, yeah. You know, the whole countdown thing, not a thing apparently. So,
No.
Hello, we're live. This is Pair of Geeks.
There's a bit of space. So...
A bit of space. But you're so far away.
Well, I just moved the camera a bit, but never mind.
I can't do that. It'll be shocking. Why don't you move this way?
Okay.
We'll just be in the middle of the frame for those of you watching on YouTube.
Ooh.
But, community service announcement, we now podcast on Podbean. Which is basically this as an audio recording, so you can listen to us in your car. And we can cause car crashes.
But lots of RPG players, they like to listen to stuff in their cars.
Yes.
And people commute crazy distances nowadays.
What better podcast to listen to than a pair of geeks listening to this instead of watching it on YouTube? But
Indeed.
If you want to catch us live, YouTube is the way. And speaking of live, I made a boom mic. Look, I think that's awesome.
Yes, it's awesome.
It also has static noise, which is why we took 20 minutes to get going.
Yes, but that is an issue with the road itself more than that.
So, that means this episode, you get the delight of hearing our coffee cups going up and down on the table.
We're going to be very gentle.
We have a table mic again.
Yes, but we're going to be gentle.
Yes, now, we have some other community service announcements this week.
We do.
We do. We also have a question already before we even got going, which is, did you check out Rune Hammer's channel?
You're subscribed to him. Well, this channel is subscribed to him. I personally don't watch him.
Well, Rune Hammer was one of the very first people to ever do me a video response. And when I saw him, at the time, he was a much bigger channel. He had like 300 people watching him. And like I had none.
Oh, I thought you meant he'd lost a load of subs and something awkward had happened.
No, this
something
is going
controversial.
right back to the birth of Pair of Geeks. And he did a VR to my video on fumbles. And this video he filmed, it was at night and it was very darkly lit. And he just looked like Jeff Goldblum. He did, and I've said it ever since. Like any time I speak to Rune Hammer, I basically refer to him as Jeff Goldblum, even though he doesn't really that much look like Jeff. But that's the thing, by the way, in Hollywood, you only refer to people by first name. So Jeff, me and Jeff, we were hanging out on a video response thing there on YouTube. So no, I haven't actually checked out his site, his channel lately. I know he's very much into niche systems, and he's a bit like Chepe, like in that regard.
Chepe Le Pepe, who wore a very awesome waistcoat for his wedding.
He did.
Which I'm going to copy.
At Chepe's wedding had a very awesome waistcoat.
It was
We're
orange.
kind of digging into brigade history here, aren't we?
Wait, is Rune Hammer the same as Rune Slinger?
Oh, that's who I was thinking of.
No, this is Rune Hammer. He's got like
Rune Hammer?
30, I'm assuming it's a he, but 30,000 subscribers.
Well, in fairness, Rune Slinger has grown in channel size
Yes.
since all those years ago. In that case, no. So you're saying this channel is subscribed
Yes,
to Rune?
because I looked.
Oh, right.
He's. I was going to say, because he doesn't really look like Jeff Goldblum either. He's got like a moustache, glasses.
What kind of content is? Because if
Gaming.
this channel's subscribed, it probably means I subscribed at some point in the past.
Yes, you did. Yes.
So I've obviously seen something, but I'm afraid I have no frame of reference here as to who that is. Hopefully, it's not the D&D channel of that Pro Jared guy.
No.
Because that would be awkward. And I'd definitely be unsubscribing if that were the case. But no, I don't know. Apparently, yes, in the past, but I'm afraid I can't place it right now. But we were in the middle of community service announcements.
Yes.
Because there were some.
Mm-hmm.
Was definitely talking about one that I've now lost my train of thought on, but there are some others.
Well, it was the podcast. We were talking about it being a podcast.
Yes, that's the thing. I was actually going to bring up Baba Yaga's hut.
Oh.
To show off, because for those of you waiting, I forgot to do it, but for those of you waiting for Reaper Bones 4 in the UK and Europe, you should around about now be receiving the Bones 4 delivery.
Because obviously it was delivered to us first before anybody else.
That's
in the
not
UK.
true, because I saw pictures of people on their Facebook streams this last week getting theirs before I got mine. But we got ours yesterday. It's really awesome. What do you make of Bones 4? What are your impressions?
Well, this is the thing. I was saying to you that I enjoy painting that little snake. I love the textures because most of my experience with painting miniatures has been centered around board games, and the molds, whilst the design is great and of the model, and whilst I'm sure the originals would have been great, you were mentioning that the mold might have worn down a bit, and you definitely get that with these models because it's so hard to like paint certain bits because they kind of go into other bits, whereas here that it's very like obvious, okay, this is this. And
so the bone stuff is really good molds by comparison.
Yes,
is what you're saying.
yes.
So yes, because board game, like if a board game has miniatures, generally they'll do tens and tens and tens of thousands of runs from the same molds.
Yeah.
And they wear out and they get less and less detailed as they get older, which is why now when you even if you do manage to find like a Railpath of Europe, for example, are still producing some of their original D&D models from the 70s, and although I haven't bought one that I have an original model of, and I know models in the old days didn't have as much detail, but you look at them and you think these molds have definitely lost some detail over the years. But it is still fantastic, though. I have to say, it is a little bit of a guilty secret. I have in the past ordered some Railpath models just for old time's sake, because they are kind of awesome. Takes me right back to when I started role playing.
I'm going to paint the dinosaur men next, I think.
The dinosaur men. So
Yes.
because we got different things in Bones 4.
Yes.
So you have dinosaur men.
Yes, I went for a lot of the Lost Valley dinosaur, like Journey to the Center of the Earth type stuff. So this is a group of, I suppose, half men, half dinosaur, but they're all different types of dinosaurs. So
kind of like a were-dino person.
no, they don't look like a were creature because they don't look feral or anything like that. Like for example, one of them has the head of a pterodactyl and wings of a pterodactyl and all that, but it's got like a torso of a man, if that makes sense, and legs. So yeah, they're like kind of upright dinosaurs that behave like humans with ripped men chests.
Anthropomorphic dinosaurs.
Yes.
Awesome.
And they're slightly bigger than the average miniature, which is also good because they look quite imposing. So there's one of those. There's a T-Rex. Whatever the name, I'm sure someone in the comments will know, of the herbivore with the big like club thing at the end of the tail.
Triceratops?
No, Triceratops is the one with the big spikes.
Yes. On the but I thought it also had a club tail.
It's got like a regular tail. Stegosaurus has spikes at the end of the tail.
Okay.
It's not a Stegosaurus.
Well,
it's the one with the big.
At the risk of this becoming a dinosaur channel, Dungeons and
There's
Dinosaurs.
There's nothing wrong with that. I love dinosaurs.
I have changed the miniatures I go for now with Bones, because I still have some Bones 3 that isn't painted, and that is because I did go through a long period of time where I wasn't painting that much. However, I have been painting again. Sorry?
We were busy.
We were, yes. But I have been painting again, quite a lot. I have the painting studio set up again, and I'm back in full swing and doing stuff. So I'm working my way through a lot of Bones 3 stuff. So I'm kind of glad I didn't order too much Bones 4. There's still quite a lot. And I'm focusing now really on the unusual things. Those obscure monsters in the monster manuals that you never had a mini for, and I'm kind of filling in those blanks in my collection. But I think when Bones 5 comes out later this year, I'm thinking I'm just going to get a few of the feature pieces, like a few of the big things.
Well, you got a few big things this time as well, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I always get the big things.
I got a couple of big things.
But I also got a number of the smaller items, and I'm thinking I'm going to try to avoid doing that.
Yeah.
I'm just going to get a few things, because there will be stuff in my painting queue when Bones 5 arrives in 2 years' time. Because there's so much in my queue.
The biggest thing I got was this insane upright woolly mammoth. with various features, but the best thing about it is that it has a club with one of those fertility goddess idols on the end of the club.
When I interviewed Kip from Reaper about his standout models from the Kickstarter, he cited that one. He said it was one of his favourites.
I'm not surprised. It's a really unique idea. It's
Now there's one more community service announcement before we get on to today's show, which is about cities and of course
and other things.
Game of Thrones. But one other thing has happened, big bit of news in the community lately. Bethesda.
You mean
plagiarism? Bethesda.
I've always said Bethesda.
Okay. We never say any word the same, though.
No, I know.
Worked this out. They have a bit of an issue. They released a tabletop RPG adventure supplement to promote their new Elsewhere expansion for their online version of Skyrim.
Elsewhere.
It's the land where all the cat people come from.
Right. I'm not a massive expert on Elder Scrolls, so okay.
And it turns out that right down to the grammar and the sentence structure, this thing is basically a rip-off of a D&D adventure from a couple of years ago.
Was it really only a couple of years ago?
2016.
If you're going to plagiarise something, at least pick something from the 70s. No one's going to remember
it. The way it was done, they changed the words, but kept sentence structure, grammar, paragraphs, and so on. So they just subtly changed the words enough to fool filters. So, but it turns out this was a subcontractor to Bethesda, Bethesda, and they have now pulled the supplement. But it just goes to show, how many times has this kind of thing happened with bigger publishers? But because in this case, the person who was targeted was quite they're major players, right? Imagine if it's a smaller player. Would we ever hear that? Would we hear about it? And would that get pulled?
No, we wouldn't.
Makes you think that we need better controls on this stuff. And the best control I always found, because when I used to release computer games, and I used to release public domain software basically back in the day, and the best protection I ever had was the community, because the community. There was cases where people sort of passed themselves off as my studio name, pretending to be my studio and saying I wrote this game and stuff, and it was the community that always kind of policed that and said, really? You're Becky Rose? I don't think so. It's down to us as the community at large to just hold these people accountable. So that's the community service announcements bar 1.
We need to do that.
Bar 2. So the other one I just want to get out there. We're going to talk about Game of Thrones later this episode. We are up to season 8, episode 4.
Actually, there are 3 things we could talk about with Game of Thrones.
I've got a list.
But there's something else that we're going to
be talking about. So if you haven't seen it yet, then
spoilers.
Yeah.
Night is dark, full of spoilers, yada yada yada.
Okay, but before we go any further, I said I was going to do this on camera, only it's going to be really tricky. So basically, we're out of printer toner.
For the podcast people, we could hold the paper really close and do some
rustling sounds like this.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Rustling sounds, ASMR.
Okay. The most awesome people in the world. Now we're out of printer toner and we have some new names to add. So I'm going to add them with pen.
But obviously we'll get it done properly.
So I'm going to write in the first one. So this is Fuke Enterprises.
Thank you, Fuke.
We love you, Fuke. Joining the list. And the other one, I'm going to struggle to spell this. So Elizabeth. That I can spell.
This isn't just any old Elizabeth. This is Liz from Angry Hamster Publishing. Liz.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
who is
Liz,
also one of our sponsors.
And Angry Hamster. That's awesome. This is a long surname. I practically ran out of ink.
Don't be silly.
So joining our esteemed list, we have Elizabeth Chapraditkull, I think, Fugue Enterprises, Amber, Brandon Fishwick, Dave Poirier, Jolly Mangina, Mark Frelfall, and Russell Higgins. Thank you so much for your support. You mean the world to us. You make this possible.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. No, it really is huge for us, because like my computer's 11 years old. We need more Patreons. Right. Okay, now Game of Thrones.
Yes.
Because Game of Thrones is kind of the inspiration for this topic today, which is cities.
Mm.
And the reason for this is because whereas in previous seasons, Game of Thrones, we need to put the most awesome people in the world on the wall behind us.
Yes.
Right. Whereas in previous seasons, Game of Thrones, and we will deal with audience stuff in a moment, by the way. I've just realised we've kind of not been paying attention to chat.
Yeah, we're kind of ignoring things.
Sorry. We will catch up. We will get there.
We have lots of stuff in this one, whereas maybe last time we didn't have enough. So.
Right. Now,
bear with.
In previous seasons, Game of Thrones was King's Landing was a lush place with a backdrop of mountains and forests. I always wondered where the farms were to keep that city fed.
Are we talking season 1 or when they moved to Dubrovnik and got a bigger budget?
Yeah, like you can look back at pictures of King's Landing when they started showing it from the outside, like looking down at King's Landing, and you see the city.
That's the point. They used Dubrovnik,
right,
which has got the walls, but it of course has like sprawling stuff outside of the walls. It's got all these like trees and shit.
In season 8, King's Landing is now Pelennor Fields.
Oh yeah.
It is empty. Like city walls, nothing.
I think it was maybe one bit that they'd never shown before, or it was like a different bit. But yeah, at the same time, it's like that.
There wasn't even grass.
Well, is it supposed to show that the grass is gone because it's winter or something, or it's all died?
It's studio floor. It's what happened? That's not how cities work.
No.
So yeah, and I mean it's always my biggest complaint of the Lord of the Rings films, like that Helm's Deep, Edoras, and Minas Tirith all was just surrounded by emptiness.
Wasn't Helm's Deep just supposed to be like a fortress? It wasn't a settlement. I thought that was the point. It was like a place of refuge. It was supposed to be just towers and walls.
Okay, but why would the outside the castle not have defensive ditches and other things designed to break up in advance?
I don't
if it's
know.
supposed to be so impregnable,
and
it would have defences.
Why did it have a fantasy version of the Death Star, like little gullet thing, which is a weak spot, and you can blow it up with a mine?
Because narrative imperative. But that wasn't my only complaint about that final scene, though.
Oh yeah,
Missandei.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I say my only complaint. This kicked off online, so we will go through the chat after this comment because I want to hear your thoughts. There was a bit of a stink people have raised about Missandei being a racist death because she's the only strong black woman on the show. She was a former slave, and she was in chains, and she was summarily dismissed with an undeveloped and incomplete character arc. Now, my personal instinct on it, when I saw Missandei die, I didn't think that was in itself racist, because we've seen so many characters die like that. My problem is that where are all the other black characters? They aren't everyone's white. Now I get the Northerners being predominantly white. That makes some sense, but Dawn has that very kind of Hispanic look.
It does, and
but
now they're all gone.
But just north of Dawn.
Yeah, exactly. Like
right,
it's all white.
Is I'm trying to remember the name of the house.
Castle Rock and Lannisters and Baratheons.
It's the Queen of Thorns. What was her name? That's the house that's kind of next up, if you like.
Yeah, Olenna Tyrell.
Yeah, Olenna Tyrell. So really white family.
Mm-hmm.
Next to Dawn, Hispanic. It was kind of like where's the cross-pollination?
Yes. Well, yeah, especially as the Martells like fucked everybody. They were very sort of open-minded on which gender they fucked and things like that. So
okay, so that's my thoughts on it. But we want to hear your thoughts. I'm gonna start going through the chat now. So had this question up for John in from ages. So Ronnie says hello all.
Yeah, we've just got a few hellos and things.
So let's get past the hellos. Hi Phil. You're now in the middle of it, Ronnie. Oh, right. Crikey, these were from before we even got live. Right.
Which is cool.
I'm working on it. Thumbs up to you too, Phil. Hi, Fuke. Stupid misclick. Anyways, I'm here, says Fuke. Glad to hear it. Phil says he always listens to podcasts in the car.
I thought so.
I won't comment on your driving. Usually it's Rippercast, but no longer.
No,
yes, now you can listen
instead.
to us on repeat if hearing it live is not enough. I stumbled upon this score, says Scott Poe. I think we're...
You know what it is? You know what it is? It's not my, like, anatomy. It's whenever Scott comes on, I start choking.
Have another drink.
Because this is what happened last time.
Hi, Scott. Are we going to just be regularly on Friday now? If you're too nerdy to go down the pub, spend the night with us.
Yeah, well, I do have a bi-weekly thing at the moment. A bi-weekly game at the moment. I don't know when that finishes, though. So Fridays are not the most ideal if we're doing it every week. That's the only thing.
So do we need to go... What are you doing next Friday?
Good question. I think...
Should we move to Wednesday? Because we've got UK Games Expo coming up and we'll actually be in Birmingham.
We've got the meetings.
Oh. We organise the convention on Wednesdays. We'll work it out. Right.
Probably Tuesdays then. Or Thursdays.
We need a regular night.
Yes.
Okay.
Welcome.
You'll be hooked after this, says Phil. Scott's already hooked. Not his first Pog rodeo.
Yes, I was just saying.
Right, Ronnie Bradley. Cities live and breathe and grow and scheme regardless of what PCs do or don't do. And that is true. And we're going to talk a lot about that, I think, later on in the stream.
Yes.
So for now, let's get the chat caught up. Aren't forts just military settlements? Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a bit like any base here in today.
That's what Helm's Deep was supposed to be.
If you look at a modern military base, and I maintain that a modern military base is the modern version of an ancient fort, right? And if you look at a modern military base now, they have housing.
Okay.
Right? Because the people who work in the fort live nearby, right? Either on base or on a little estate just outside that's kind of like a closed community. Something you can put in your cities, by the way, as a little area of basically military people. Anyway, so yeah, on base. I've lived on base housing. It's really big houses. They're quite nice. Terrible internet connection in all of them. It's true. It's true. When I lived on base housing in Brampton, the internet connection was so slow. A dial-up modem would have been faster. Whoa. It was horrendous.
And when were you living there?
Many years ago. But 40 megabit or 20 megabit internet was what I was actually paying for. I think I was paying for 40 megabit unlimited. But I couldn't get speeds anywhere like that. And if you've got housing, then you must also have the farmland to support that. So military settlements in themselves cause people to gravitate towards them. And you know, not only that, it's great to live in the Middle Ages in the protection of a fort. You know, enemy army comes along to rape and pillage.
The point of Helm's Deep.
Exactly. Then you can live inside the walls. So people
point.
People should have been living in the region of it.
But they weren't.
Apparently not. Hell's Deep was informed by World War II community bomb shelters, maybe.
That's an idea.
Maybe. But community bomb shelters were where the people were. Outside should not be empty, people. Right.
Yeah, I mean, whoa, hold on. We're missing the bit where they were travelling to Helm's Deep from Edoras, and a fairly small pack of warg riders managed to, like, get a load of the soldiers on the way. They managed to miss all the women and children because they ran away. But do you remember that scene?
I do remember it, of course.
And it's like, that wouldn't happen if Helm's Deep was, like, right there or something. Like
Strider. I don't mind the fact that Helm's Deep was a distance from Edoras. What I mind is that Helm's Deep has nothing around it. Right. Phil B sees it. He sees the light. Yep, Becky's right. Even forts would have all sorts of crap outside the walls for the off-duty troops.
Well, yeah, there's no toilet.
Brothels? You went to toilet, I went to brothel.
Well, yeah, that's why they crap outside, because there's no toilets, they have to crap outside.
Scott Poe is too married and 45 to go down to the pub.
Aw, never mind.
Jason can't relate to that, but I can. You're in your teens.
Fuck off! I'm 28.
Exactly. Ronnie says, I think the death was not by design racist, but maybe racist by default, given the lack of other black characters. This is what I'm saying in the show. Feel the same about Tara's death on Buffy with regards to homophobia. Yeah, that's an old on-screen death now, Tara from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but I do agree it's kind of defaultism.
Yeah, I think that the premise, without them thinking about the whole race thing, was they are executing her most loyal, trusted advisor in front of her, as in front of
I didn't
Daenerys.
mind Missandei dying.
Yeah, and the whole thing with the chains, as I said to you, Daenerys is supposed to be the breaker of chains, and then you get a remark from Cersei saying, so much for the breaker of chains. It's supposed to be like a mockery thing.
And this is it. I didn't really have issue with Missandei dying. I have issue, to some extent, with the lack of representation for women of colour and men of colour in the show. I mean, Grey Worm's still there, but...
Yeah, but he's a slave too. He's got no dick.
And there's one.
Yeah.
There are other there in the background, but, of all the characters, you think about the sheer scope of Game of Thrones, of all those characters, it's
all
really...
the white people.
It's 2019, people. Make our media represent our society.
Yes.
Fuke says, wait, are you two not married?
Oh, that's so
It's
cute.
funny you should mention that, because we are engaged.
We've been engaged for a while.
And we're getting married at the start of next year.
Yes. But we're not married yet.
No, we're saving for a marriage. After the expo, we're going to start saving.
Yes.
Because UK Games Expo... Oh, yeah, that's... Hello, Andrew...
Hello. Aldorn. Is it Aeldorn?
Aeldorn? I think Aeldorn.
Yes.
We'll
with
find
a
out if that's
Harvard
relevant.
coat of arms.
Harvard? Is that Harvard?
Yeah, Harvard.
No, Harvard. I thought you said Hartford.
No, Harvard. Sorry, Harvard.
Isn't a coat of arms like an ancestral lineage thing?
Yeah, but universities do it as well.
But they have no ancestral, like aristocratic lineage. I mean...
I don't know. I don't know how it all works, but my university has a coat of arms too.
Well, that makes some sense. I mean, York is like Doomsday Book in age, I suppose. I mean, I sort of get it, but meh.
Yeah.
Anyway, F. Aaron Carthy
Hello.
says, "Hey guys," and we say, "Hi guys" back. And what a great wedding it will be. Oh, thank you. Right, so we caught up. I think we've spoken our piece on Missandei.
Mm-hmm. But there are still a couple more Game of Thrones things we want to get off our chest.
Yes.
That was actually me putting it on Scott. I did do a short film once where I did have to be an American character. The director was American, which kind of helped because there were just some vowels that were really, really hard. And like getting a consistent accent, because apparently I was sort of a bit East Coast and then I kind of went a bit West Coast, so Yeah. But then, like, I've heard plenty of people with an American accent try and do an English accent, and what they do is they draw everything out like this quite often.
Wow, that's really convincing, babe. So, it would be remiss of us not to mention the coffee cup of distraction.
Yeah, as you can see, we've set up the cameras so our coffee cups are not in shot.
They can be heard on the podcast, though.
Yes, but you get my point. As in, literally, two things. One, you've spent 2 years filming the bloody thing. You've had ample time to sort this shit out. And secondly, if I was Daenerys, or, like, what's her name playing the character, and sitting there with a goblet. Yes.
Yeah.
She's right next to it. Why didn't she take it off quickly and be like, oh, that looks like it's in shot. I'll just take that off.
It's all a needless distraction, and it's distracting us from the fact that the good guys are absolutely terrible strategists.
Yeah.
If they keep us talking about a coffee cup, we won't notice the fact that the heroes are really awful. Right. How did Daenerys get ambushed? She has a dragon, she can see the landscape beyond, she got ambushed by an entire fleet. How could she not see that? Oh yes, I'm flying there, but I fly at 20 feet off the deck.
You mean like, the water? But yes, she wasn't, she was about 100 feet in the air.
Yes, that's true.
So she could have
somehow she got ambushed. Right. And not only did she get ambushed in the first place, which is appalling given that she can do aerial reconnaissance, not only has Cersei yet again outwitted the good guys, showing that she is basically more appropriate as a leader than the good guys are, Daenerys then fails to take out Euron's fleet.
Yes.
And here's the thing about Euron's fleet. It's got those dragon ballista things at the front, right? Can kill a dragon, so we're led to believe that, oh my god, she's got to run away, she's got to save our last remaining dragon. Had you not noticed, if those ballistas turned around the other way, they would have to shoot through their own sails. Like, they would have to trash themselves. They wouldn't. They'd be unsighted as well. Why didn't she just fly off and attack from the rear? Why not? Because she's rubbish. We know she's rubbish, because guess what else she failed to do this episode?
What?
They've just defeated the Night King. Is the Night King dead? Is there any more coming? Is that it? Is that it from the Night King? And you know what? We can't answer that question because she didn't bloody look. She could have flapped over, spent an afternoon looking around. Yep, it's all clear. No, didn't do it. She's just, must march south now and kill Cersei.
I still think that Sansa, had a pretty good idea. It's like, they fought a really insane battle. Let them rest a bit.
Yeah, that's now this is the thing that actually for me it's the Game of Thrones this year has become entertaining to watch, right? It is entertaining and I am enjoying it, but it hasn't got that intrigue that George R.R. Martin did so well.
Yes,
it hasn't. It's lost the whole it takes a season to get from the north to the south and all the intrigue that happens in between, and the whole Sansa Daenerys thing is the current writer's attempt at keeping
it's annoying.
it.
Like, surely they would.
Good enough. It's not George R.R. Martin levels of.
Like, there's no reason really for them to spat like they do.
No, I don't know why.
I don't
like each other.
Like, I understand if both the characters, just because of various reasons, don't like each other or aren't friends or whatever. That's fine, and that's completely understandable. But surely they would still almost like. In a professional capacity, at least put up with each other.
Been put in a place so much on her attitude towards Daenerys as well. It's like, why is it still persisting? We haven't been given that reason as to why she dislikes her.
No, it's just she dislikes because Andrew is apparently first year at Harvard. That's why he uses the crest.
Right. Is so. What, in the next year do you get a Kappa Pi thing or something? Is that how it works? I don't know. I was never educated.
I believe in your second year at Harvard, that's when you turn 21, isn't it? And then you can drink alcohol. I suppose it depends if you go to college first or not.
Well, there is that. I got accepted to MIT, but I never went. Coats of arms were sometimes extended, what he says, by the founders of institutions, and their coat of arms were adopted in no circumstances or can be bequeathed by the local lord. Well, there are no local lords in America. It's kind of the point. They had a revolution to get rid of all that stuff.
Yeah, but we did invade them and stuff.
Well...
That will be the Martell thing, supposedly. The fucking they fuck whoever...
I think the pronunciation of Patrick... We need to explain this for people on the podcast.
Yes.
Why did you just burst out laughing? Would you like to read the quote on screen?
Fiuk has written, "There is no wrong way to Fiuk."
I believe this is in response to the most awesome people in the world, which has Fiuk's name.
Ah. Yes, of course, it's completely that. Or to pronounce Fiuk, even. Fajok.
These days, coats
yes, they can be bought.
That's true, but it's not genuine. You know, if you buy a lordship in the UK...
Yeah, I know someone who's got a lordship, like 1 square metre of land or something in Scotland.
But, do you know what actually has happened there? They haven't actually bought that land. They're not actually the lord of that land. What they have become is Mr. Lord
Yeah, I know.
Right? Only the Queen can change your prefix, and an appointee of the Queen for marriage, all that kind of stuff, right? And doctors and so on. Oh, we need to reset the chat thing. Things around on the screen. We can do this. So those on the podcast are very confused as to what's going on there. Not to worry. Yes. So basically, those lordships you buy, you're not actually changing your prefix. You're just making Lord your first name.
Indeed.
So there's that. Right, anyway, I think that's probably enough Game of Thrones for now. Because this stream is supposed to be about cities and making them a living, breathing thing.
There was also that insane Game of Thrones Kickstarter thing.
Oh, go on. Why don't you talk about that for a moment?
I'll do it briefly, mainly because the main drama is over and it's kind of been resolved and stuff. But basically it was something that somebody linked on Facebook, and it was a Kickstarter. I say was because it's not there anymore, of this incredibly shoddy and shady looking Kickstarter by this guy who has ample failed businesses who he made this card game that was so bad, like we could do better with the budget we have, and as the prototypes and what, it was utterly terrible. It was very shady, very scammy looking, like he was charging just $5 pledge for the card game, like the whole card game, and he said that, oh yes, the if you invest towards this, then it will help us buy the rights. So he hadn't actually got the rights yet, and he was asking for £11,000 or $11,000, I can't remember which. And so I sort of spent a bit of time laughing about this and thinking how ridiculous it is. And then it got really dark in that he did a stream. He either didn't turn the stream off accidentally, or he only turned his camera off, or he did it deliberately. Whatever it was, he's a disgusting human being, this creator, and I hope he dies. But basically there were these sort of this audio stream of him basically abusing his kids. He took it down. People have managed to acquire the audio, and they took it to the police. So the police are now aware of this. Some people think he did it as one of those sort of troll things of like, oh, you pretend to abuse your kids, but at the same time, I've listened to it. It is the most horrible thing I've ever heard in my life, like bar none. And whether it was trolling or not, it was absolutely disgusting. So now it's off Kickstarter. You will probably find it on Indiegogo unless they've taken it down as well. Do not even do the $1 to comment on Indiegogo, because Indiegogo can still take money even though it doesn't necessarily reach the goal, which is why he's done it. But and it's kind of gone on from there. He's taken down his Facebook. He's tried to disguise himself as his wife and really weird stuff. But yeah,
I heard
this
you saying
happened.
about this, that he put on a wig and
He put on a wig and lipstick or something and pretended to be his wife, which he names all his businesses after, by the way.
Let's talk about RPGs.
Yes.
It's meant to be why we're here,
Okay.
and I think we've been on air quite a while. Now, just before we do, there is one other thing I just quickly want to say. We are just shy of 3,500 subscribers. When I went downstairs just now to get that glass of water, I heard us lose one.
Oh.
Like, we're literally live right now. We're going to talk about RPGs right now, and you left. Why? We really... I personally
Kitty looks so
would
sad
very much
from
love to
that.
be able to write over 3,500 subscribers on our business cards when we go to the convention later this month, to the extent I've already written it. So now I need 3,500 subscribers.
Yes, please.
So please subscribe.
Please.
Now, RPGs.
Yes.
And how to make your... Was it Trump?
No, but... Yeah, I know it sounds a lot like Trump, this person, but no, he wasn't. Yes, Fiuk wants us to get on with it and talk about cities.
It's about time too.
Okay.
I haven't got anything. No, I'm joking.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do, because you showed it to me.
Did I?
Well, you showed me the bit of the thing. Yeah.
I haven't prepared anything. I can't think what you're thinking of there.
I'm sure you showed me a list of
That's
stuff.
all Game of Thrones stuff.
Oh.
I
thought it had this. I didn't. Oh, God. Okay. Well,
right.
we know that you rant a lot about the walls thing.
Yes, the walls. Now,
But
we've covered that.
Yes, exactly. But we are doing about bringing your cities to life.
Yeah, and what does that really mean? And I think, for me, bringing a city to life is exactly the same as bringing a country to life. In fact, again, I'm going to refer to history. If you go back through history, there are a large number of city-states. Some of them are still around. Vatican City, for example, is a city-state.
Yes, it is. Yes.
And San Marino, Monaco, places like that. And the way you bring a country to life is in the same way that some GMs bring their worlds to life, where they have multiple countries with different interests. All right? So if that's how you bring a world to life, you bring a country to life by doing the same thing. You have multiple factions with different interests. And then you go down again to the city level, you do exactly the same. Multiple factions, different interests. So what if, when you turn up at the city, first thing you see is some thieves' cants written on a jeweller's wall saying that this is a good place to rob, or something like that. So some marking saying that basically a thief in the party would recognise as it's about to be burgled. That then straight away gives your player, your rogue in the party, some RP opportunities and a way to get either in with or against the Thieves Guild. And you do them literally as they walk through the gate.
One thing I quite like to do, not the thieves can't, but showing some kind of evidence of what religions there are, so maybe you get some zealots talking about something or beating up a peasant because their nose is a bit wonky.
Yeah, so religions is definitely a layer that can be added on a city, because you can have multiple competing religions, but you can also have multiple competing factions of power factions within the city itself. It is, yes. So religion is a layer of that, but let's say, for example, there's a merchant guild. Now, maybe if you're in the merchant guild, you can have a yellow back on your shop sign, have a yellow background or something like that, and that means something to traders in the city. It means their transactions are backed, and then these ones happen to be anyone with the yellow backed sign happens to be the nicer shops and all a bit better, but they're also a little bit more expensive than the other shops because they've got to pay those guild membership dues. And then there's a new guild or a different guild where they're using a red background on their shop signs, and there's competition there because they don't recognise each other. And then you'll get shops where they've got a striped background, and so just with shops, the moment you've walked into the city, you've got all these different power vacuums and these opportunities for RP and factions to be in conflict with each other. And religion is another layer to put on top.
Yes.
Did you have more on the religion thing? Sorry, I was pausing for you there.
Well, I mean, you can play religion quite a lot of ways, but of course, if there's conflict, it's gonna maybe spark a bit more interest as opposed to the cleric just going, "I'm gonna go away for half a day and pray in the temple," you know. So yeah, I do like to kind of put the religion type of things a bit in people's faces. You know, someone's done something wrong, they are therefore going to be punished for it, type thing, and also. As I was saying before, it shows that the church or the temple, whatever what you want to call it, has power to punish people in a similar way that, say, the regular town guard would do it, or the authority would do it. Or there might even be a bit of, you know, funny conflict going on between the two, in that they technically don't have authority and the guard don't like it, but they won't do anything because... You know, they know so-and-so who controls this, or money coming in. It can be all kinds of things knitted together.
The thing about cities that I think is true of every old city I've ever been in. Hi, Russell.
Hola, ¿qué
Russell
tal?
Hi. And it's true of every city that's been around a while that I've ever been in, is that a city doesn't really... Quite often, although it might have one main centre that's bigger than all other centres, the point is it has lots of commercial areas.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And that is because cities happen because villages grow into each other.
Yeah.
And so you've got all these different cities. I mean, where we are, where there's a main town centre,
yes.
But there are so many other places you can go to shop. And you know, and outside the commercial stuff, it's mostly residential, and the residential's not that interesting, and most of a city will be residential. So if you want to give some real life to your city, it's the commercial areas that you need to focus on. And I think what we all are probably guilty of is overlooking the personalities within a commercial district of a town. Because when you narrow it down to just the commercial area, all of a sudden now you've got an area where you can think, right, at 9 a.m. this person tends to be out on the street shouting and ranting and is, you know, mad or drunk or whatever. And now you've got some character and some personality emerging. When you try to think of a city as 20,000 people, it's hard to do that. But the reality is that 20,000 people gathers around 2 or 3 central points in the city, and nothing else is really that relevant.
No.
Because it's just going to be endless houses. So Russell says, I am going to go pray for half a day. Interpretation, I am going to go on a bender and I don't want any of you around.
As in, you know, my cleric going off to pray for half a day.
Well, I did do...
Or get a long rest in there, I suppose.
In half a day?
Well, yeah, but but they say, oh yes, but you know, I can pray, which is, you know, healing and stuff. And
why do people always think healing, or clerics and temples are all about healing in D&D in particular?
Yeah, they're not always.
Because when you look at the list of gods in D&D, half of them are about war. So surely going to pray actually means you're going to go and start whacking people over the head.
Yes. Well,
no, seriously, think about it, right? If you're a god of war, what is it you're actually giving to you're expecting from a temple dedicated to you? Surely a temple is in that case a barracks.
Yeah, or something like the Golden Halls when you go off to
Kung Fu place.
Well, yeah, no, I was thinking of like the Vikings with the Golden Halls and drinking mead after your final battle.
Yes, Valhalla and stuff. But I was thinking, you know, like Kung Fu monasteries, which is basically a monastery of
yes, that's true.
combat,
Yeah.
You know. I don't know why I was doing that. It's not even. Well, that's kind of the opposite of what it should be. That.
Well, yeah, but they do. You get it in movies. Obviously, people on the podcast can't see me, but you know where they're like, "Oh, come here," type.
Oh, there's always that "come here" moment.
Come here.
Oh yes, I'm so in control. I'm telling you what to do.
Yeah, it's like, no, stop. Don't start looking for me until tomorrow. Yeah.
Ronnie says, one thing I'm having to deal with my players with regards to people or NPCs in a town or country is that they are more than just possible information hives for players.
Yeah, people are just going about their day to day, whether the players are there or not.
Yeah, I think it's always kind of problematical to make an NPC feel like they have a life, because ultimately you want your NPCs to be available to your players, right?
Yes.
Otherwise, why introduce them? You want those interactions. But if an NPC truly has a life, then they're going off doing things, and you might have to wait to speak to them. And where's the story in that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I wouldn't hinder somebody by saying, "Oh, you can't speak to this person because they're only around between the times of 4:30 and 5 p.m." You know, I wouldn't do that.
But on the flip side, when you do speak to them,
they don't just stand there waiting for the PCs to come up and talk to them.
If they can reference something that they've done earlier in the day,
yes.
and it helps to bring a bit of life in. But going back to the point earlier, so if you've defined, you've got a large city, it has one main commercial area, say, and a couple of minor ones. Now you've got that main commercial area, and you know you've got certain people you can put into that area, regulars in that area.
Yeah.
But I think it's also then good to start thinking about how the powers, the factions of power start working within that commercial area. So, you know, and what are those factions? And, you know, the guild system, I think, is a great
Having said
mechanism for that.
I want to get your opinion on the infamous Adventures Guild.
Are you referring to the fact I've always wanted to have a guild in my games called the Adventurers Guild that literally has a bulletin board of adventures? I've always wanted to do that.
It's one of the generic starting points of a campaign, and that you're all in this room and you've all been chosen to go on this adventure because you joined the local Adventures Guild.
I've never had a game with an actual Adventurers Guild, and I want to do it.
I honestly don't really see the point of them.
But if you've got a guild system in the city, it makes sense that you could have an Adventurers Guild. It could offer services for adventurers.
I get the thing of services, but why can't it just be, you know, a piece of parchment on a tavern door that says wanted, you know, somebody to sort out this rat infestation, for example?
Well, if you go to a local newsagent, quite often you've got that sort of corkboard,
yes,
haven't you?
Yes, you do,
cleaners and stuff, and maybe the Adventurers Guild, well, maybe what you're referring to is that.
Yes, I am. Whereas an Adventurers Guild to me seems something that's got a lot of money coming in all the time, which is kind of weird. Yeah, basically. Because it's always like this sort of fancy thing, which means that money's coming in from somewhere, but surely
certainly not the players.
Yeah, well, exactly, because surely they're paying the players to do the adventure. So what? Do they take a cut? What's going on there?
Well, they must do. It must be taking a cut.
Yeah, or maybe the adventures that they're giving out are so significant to the settlement that this faction in power is willing to fund them.
The other thing I want to do is I want to have a tavern called The Long Rest.
Yes, I like that idea.
Hello, Marshall. So
Hello,
Marshall Monk says, "Hi, geeks. I was thinking of creating a mega city for my game, as most of my cities end up around the size of a Skyrim city, for example. Any ideas for what I need to have in a city of that size?" Ooh. Well, what I said earlier about villages growing into each other tends to result in one main commercial area and lots of smaller ones. What you have in a megacity is main commercial areas for different types of industry.
Yes, absolutely.
So you're starting to look at things like New York and London for your inspiration.
Yeah.
London, for example, has a financial district.
Yeah.
It has,
well, so does New York, actually.
Well, yes.
Manhattan.
But I'm not going to talk about New York because I've not been there.
I've been there.
Yes.
And also Spider-Man 2 is like a full representation of Manhattan, and I've played it to death, so...
I've seen it on telly.
As in the video game, but yes.
Where was it? There are other quarters as well.
Yeah, so you've got like financial district, you've got things like, okay, like a Chinatown, so you might get like specific cuisine or something from a specific area. There's things like cloth and dye, spices. Or...
Camden Market.
Yep.
So, you know, there's a few specialist markets because you've got Brick Lane Market.
Yep.
There's Speaker's Corner.
Yeah, Speaker's Corner. What's it called? The other main market I'm thinking of with all the fresh produce.
the bits with lots of tourists tend to have lots of pavement vendors.
Yeah.
Quite often selling spray paint pictures of planets.
Yes.
Sorry, I laughed there because I once sold a painting and it was exactly that. So Russell says, I usually have several hooks going on at one time in a city. There are many moving parts and many...
Sometimes conflicting goals.
Yes.
I like that when a city is already in conflict with itself, again without the players being there, and then the players kind of come in and they say, oh, right, there's these 2/3 factions that don't like each other for some reason, and they kind of fall into it, and maybe they're employed by one faction but the other faction kidnaps them, or they find that actually the other faction's better or something.
Well, if they're mercenaries, they switch faction and
Yeah,
end
yeah.
up fighting against NPCs they already are introduced to.
Yeah, so lots of nice intrigue there.
Yeah, especially if you introduce the NPCs of a faction, you know, you have 3 or 4 strong NPCs, and then you end up literally in the next adventure campaigning against them, and the players fully know these NPCs already. That just sounds marvellous, and I want to run a city game now.
I like city games because I like, well, I was going to say I like playing rogues, which I do. I'm not a massive fan of the 5th edition mechanics for rogues, but whenever I chose to play a rogue, in a lot of the games I've played, there's hardly ever any city sessions, or not even campaigns, but you know what I mean, where there's you spend a bit of time in a city. It's always oh yeah, we're going off into the wilderness now, da, 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 da. And it's yeah, but the city's my home. I know it like the back of my hand. I want to explore it, get involved in the intrigue and sneak around.
It is a very different kind of campaign, isn't it,
Yes.
to be in a city, but I think the real lesson is that the techniques are still the same.
Yes.
You know, you in the wilderness you'll have a dungeon, but in a city you've got a basement.
Yeah. But I think that's why I like Corporation as well, because of course a lot of the time you're in sprawling cities.
Yeah, I mean, it's I can't think of many times when we go off into wilderness. It's all about the city.
Yeah.
I would say that the Corporation game we streamed on Pair of Geeks 2 is a very bad example of how to do cities per se. It's a great example of how to go completely over the top.
Yes, I'm talking about at the start, possibly, of a campaign, as opposed to at the end of one of yours.
But I like what Russell's saying there about having several hooks, because when I run campaigns, particularly my fantasy campaigns, if I've got Armageddons going on, which if I'm doing a fantasy campaign, I'm the kind of GM that has Armageddon going on. I do everything on a grand epic scale. And one thing I don't think I've ever done is had a single Armageddon. It's like when my players go into a dragon's lair, the reason I have so many dragon models is because in my worlds, dragons aren't lonely creatures. They live in family groups, because that's more epic. So Armageddon should come in batches as well, loads at once. So really, if you're doing a city campaign, whatever the hook to your adventure is, if it's not Armageddon, you know, it's whatever power conflicting with another, then yeah, absolutely, the more the merrier. So Fuchs says, how small can you get with that multiple factions? Town, village, hamlet, so much good info here, so inspiring, like undead families stuck inside an undead plants.
A reference to the previous stream,
which you can check out on YouTube and Podbean.
Yep.
So how small can you go and have multiple factions? Back in when I was a Viking reenactor, one of the things I noticed was that when our group grew beyond 12 people, there would start to be schisms and splits, and so somebody would then break off, and then the group would be smaller, and then it would grow again, and it would break off. I think it's impossible for humans to have 10 people in the same room without 2 of them hating each other.
Okay.
And if you get 15 people, then you've got 3 or 4 people hating each other and 2 people having an illicit affair, I genuinely, a single family unit is enough to have conflicts with multiple sides. So yeah, you can go right down to a single room and still have multiple factions to answer that question. Town hires Adventurers Guild. Guild pays.
Accentuate.
Is that a legal term?
I guess so, yes.
Oh, you said it like you knew it.
Well, yeah, but remember that I'm very good at reading things and spelling things, but I have no idea what they mean.
I don't know what accentuate means. I think we're going to have it explained. Pays, accentuates, that's how I did it anyway. Well, I mean, I would think that if you had an Adventurers Guild, a customer would come along to the guild, and so the guild itself...
so the customer would fund the Adventurers Guild.
Yes. And the Adventurers Guild would pay for the adventurers.
And then take a cut.
Mm.
That makes sense. That actually works like a lot of things in real life.
Mm.
Where there's like a thing where you can get freelancers come in and,
but
you know, there's more
promotional
stuff, more opportunity for work.
There is actually more leverage there, and I think it's worth having the discussion, because Skyrim has its, what do they call them, the companions, was it?
I don't...
In the first city you go to, which I forget the name of.
Skyrim for ages, I had no idea.
Basically the whole werewolf plot, they were a warriors guild. There's also a mages guild and so on. So they did their guilds by class, is the point.
Yeah.
But the Companions Guild was essentially an adventurers guild. You go off and have adventures for customers.
Mm.
It was that kind of thing. And if you go back to the olden days of role playing, and this is still a thing in many groups, and I do it in some of my groups, is that your group generally has a name. We have one called the Brawlers, so I have the Brawlers campaign, because the adventuring party is called the Brawlers. And that in itself is kind of like a guild, but it's a guild of just those players. Nothing stops those players building bases around the place and having shops that sell their services. If they've got the funds, they can do that. It's a D&D game. Nobody's going to make you do the accounting at the end of the month.
No.
So and in fact, in the Brawlers 2 campaign that you're playing in, you came across a group called the Silver Sisters.
Yes.
Which is simply another adventuring group, and I've already put on the map several of their chapter houses, which you're about to discover. So it's not really a spoiler by telling you now, because it's gonna...
I've completely forgotten when that game session is. I better check.
It's later this month. Or next month. It might be next month. Right. So, there's some mileage in that. But yeah, I mean, you can have more than just adventuring guilds and thieves guilds and merchant guilds and so on. You can have
absolutely.
guilds for different types of industry as well. We haven't really spoken about industry yet.
No.
Because industry can give a city its flavour.
Yes.
If it's known for a particular type of good. But here's the thing, like, quite often I've seen people, when they're world building, they'll have sometimes a nation, sometimes a city, that does a certain thing. And there is a certain truth to that, but it has to be remembered. It should never be absolute. The area we live in, for example, was historically known for shoes.
Yes.
Like, this town is famous for its shoes. Most of the shoe shops and industry is dead, but
Yeah.
But ultimately, this town still needs bread. It still needs clothes. It still needs Chinese rubbish to buy, and it still needs petrol for putting fuels to destroy the planet with. We still need all the same things every other city needs. Oh, you're doing a Chinese cat.
Yes, the lucky cat.
The lucky cat thing.
We happen to have one of those.
We do, yeah.
It's solar powered.
But the city still needs all these things, so it's
Yes.
never absolute. It's not like an entire city is shoes.
No.
And they get the food
That
from
would
the adjacent
be
city.
weird, like houses made out of shoes and walking on shoe roads.
Yeah,
and
but I have seen this in world building
shoe
where
police.
I've seen GM say, right, this country has all the food production, and there's a
What?
certain truth to it. there's a certain truth to it. Like a lot of our food, like America is the world's grain basket.
Well,
in terms of food production. The rubbish for avocado, but which is all we eat.
Well, yeah, it's all imported to California from down South America.
Yeah. I was just making the point that we only eat avocado, but
we don't. But yes, I see your point.
So cities do get some of their flavour from the dominant industries, but remember that it still needs to function as a city. That probably means it's on a waterway. You're right.
I'm so sorry. The coffee's made me yawn.
Your yawning is making me yawn.
No, it's because I said the word yawn and I forgot that you yawn from doing that.
I do.
Sorry.
And now you've told the audience that they're going to start typing it in the chat.
Yeah, well.
So Ronnie's saying, I've always wanted to run an entire game set in one city and just dealing with that. Yeah, I mean...
I think about Blades in the Dark. I'm not a massive fan of the system, but it's got a very kind of... If you've ever played the Dishonored video games, it's got a very similar setting to that, where it's just kind of this one city with lots of different districts that are very different from each other, and you might go off a little bit for a single mission, but the crux of it is within one city, and you slowly get better and better, and you might then go up to the top of the big tower where the Lord is, or something like that, and kill him.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for Blades in the Dark, but I think it kind of adds too much structure and mechanics around the concept of building up your gang, as it were.
But if I had all the time in the world, I wouldn't mind playing in or running a game where, say, you had a group of rogues in a city, and you do stuff like that, maybe with D&D mechanics or something similar.
I think if you're going to do a rogues party of rogues, like literally the rogue class, I think D&D 3.5.
Yeah, that's my favourite rogue mechanics in D&D. It still is. I love those. Or the other option is, because they're really good with cities, Warhammer mechanics, because they always have these huge sprawling cities in the setting. You've got all the other stuff to play with classes and things.
I was going to say, if you just want the grit of the system, and you want the skills trees and everything else, then of course Rollmaster.
Yeah, that's true.
With those endless critical tables, but it's a system-heavy game, high crunch.
Or if you want to go sci-fi, there's Edge of the Empire from Star Wars.
Yeah.
You set it in Coruscant, as in, All City Planet, for example.
I've kind of gone off Star Wars roleplay a bit.
Yeah, I haven't played it recently.
I much prefer Corporation now, it's just darker.
Well, yes, of course. I mean, Star Wars has hilarious bits in it.
Star Wars, to me, it's like it tries to do, slave pits and desperate times and stuff, but it's so kind of epic in
It's got lots of different features in it.
It feels too happy. Like, even Stormtroopers make me happy.
Yeah, because it's Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's its own thing. Yeah. Obviously, Corporation's dark.
Ronnie said, now our Corporation game was a perfect example of cities and how to blow them up. Accidentally, of course.
Accidentally, in inverted commas.
You didn't really blow up cities, though. You blew up countries.
Yep.
Right.
Accentuate equals adventures.
Glad we cleared that up.
Thank you.
Scott Poe says, hey, remember the old days? You had to go to the guild, half of your class to level up. Maybe a 5e version of that. More RP than a gold requirement.
Or an XP requirement.
I know, it would feel a bit artificial to me if every city had the exact same number of guild houses for all the different classes. And what do you do about the weird one in your group? Because there's always one that wants to play something strange. And then you have to introduce
3 classes at once or something. Or absurd.
Oh, you're referring to Puffin Forest.
Yes. Imagine if there was an equivalent character like Absurd in your group. What guild would he go to?
And for those who don't know, so Puffin Forest is a YouTuber who created a character that was first level in every class.
Every single class.
With a very epic backstory to explain it.
Well, he had to make the backstory because they did the whole backstory to get XP, and therefore he could then go up to the levels in each of them. Because, yeah.
Right. I don't know. I'm not keen on the idea of going to a guild house to level up. I never liked that whole training mechanic that old first edition had. Like, alright, you've gained the XP, now you've got to spend money and have a load of downtime in order to level up. I never really liked it. But I understood why. It was to get rid of the idea that you'd level up in the middle of an adventure, because it's such a mathematically driven
it's in other
XP
systems
system.
as well. You get it in Cthulhu 7th even at the moment. You get it in the One Ring. You do downtime in the One Ring and you explain what you do in order to...
I'm not against the idea of downtime. I just prefer XP not to be mechanically driven.
Yeah.
You know, you level up when it's time to level up.
Group names are called marketing, says Phil.
Yeah, absolutely. So your RPG game group, adventuring group name is he's absolutely right. Hello, Nathan.
Hello,
so
Nathan
H says, I don't have a question related to city building, but I wanted to say I've been watching the Call of Cthulhu based game and am very much enjoying it. If you need another player, I would be thrilled.
Ooh.
Well, that campaign is about to end.
Yes.
But it's
a bit
not
late
the
for
end of the group.
No. Absolutely not. But thank you very much.
I believe Phil's going to run our next session.
Phil is running a session. It sounds like it's going to be something D&D related and something homebrew.
Should we all play rogues?
We could do. I don't know. I like the bards in 5th ed, so I don't know.
Phil did actually raise something before we came on air, which is encounter ideas for beaches, and I think that I was going to tie it into the whole King's Landing thing.
I thought you were going to talk about my use of oo versus o.
For those on the podcast, I just blinked. Right, so should we talk about beaches next time then?
No.
Is that what we're doing? Are we going to talk about beaches now?
We're talking about beaches now, yeah.
Okay. Are we still talking about cities? Do we have more cities?
Yes. When you say cities, do you mean things in the chat? I'm getting really confused. What's happened?
What we're going to talk about next? Nathan says the characters and the RP level of the folks playing them in Dreams of a Bygone Age are awesome. By far my favourite campaign that I watch online.
Big brownie points.
Okay, so Nathan, this particular group has been RPing together for quite a long time now.
Done it for at least a couple of years, haven't we?
Yeah.
We take turns.
So there are
running.
other campaigns you can watch with the same players, with different people GMing each one. To get the same mix, I think you need to watch the Clockwork Saga. First one was called Clockwork Opera. Now that's mostly not now available on YouTube. But then there's a Clockwork Saga.
Yeah, but the problem with the Clockwork Saga is we stopped broadcasting it about halfway through. So that's also quite difficult to get as well.
Well, check out the Corporation one that we've been talking about. That was the same players, and we talk about that every week because it was hilarious.
But we've never done Cthulhu before, and I haven't run things for a while, so yay.
Ronnie says, downtime was a major part of the Pendragon system. I've never played the Pendragon system.
Me neither.
Okay, let's move on then. Scott Poe, to clarify, I imagine that was in the city-only campaign, where you want to get down to the minutiae and are adding more NPCs other than shopkeepers and quest guys. So this was to clarify his earlier point where he said, hey, remember the old days you had to go to the guild of your class to level up? So he's saying, so it was a city-only campaign thing.
So we were talking about a city-only campaign and doing that.
I don't remember doing that specifically myself. What I remember in the old editions was the whole, once you got a certain amount of XP, you needed to have a certain amount of gold, and then you would go for an arbitrary level of downtime determined by the amount of training you needed, you'd pay for the training with your gold, and you'd use your XP to level up. Because like the XP you earned by killing monsters and getting gold was kind of in an XP store until you spent it with your gold on your training. Yeah, so Ronnie says Pendragon could be a future game for me to run then. There's so many RPGs in the world now, isn't there? I mean,
yes, there are many.
The thing is, my only complaint, because I love the fact that there's so many RPGs, so there's basically a system for everything in terms of setting, but really, adding more systems doesn't really solve anything, because mechanically, I mean, you just find a system you like and then you can do any setting with it, right? Pretty much.
Well, yeah, I've heard people argue that before, and that, oh yeah, you just use this system, and yeah, it doesn't matter what setting, whether modern or fantasy or sci-fi, you can just use it. And I think with things like Fate, yeah, that's what they're trying to do. But there are also, as I said, there are a lot of systems that are just like, this is a system that you use with this setting.
There's some merit to it, like Corporation, Shadowrun, Cyberpunk, those kind of games.
Yeah.
They come with their splat books of equipment and so on.
Yeah.
Now that's, if you're running that type of game, you can do it with 5th edition D&D, but it's annoying because you haven't got all of those equipment lists and stuff.
Whereas in the older editions, you've got D20 Modern, for example.
Well, I was going to give the counterpoint to what I was just saying, which is
I'll be quiet then.
The other side of splat books is you get a system like Corporation, there are mechanical effects of a lot of the equipment that players don't necessarily know because they're system specific. For example, you have shields in Corporation.
Yep.
Everyone should have a shield, and ideally a spare. And then you get weapons that can go through shields.
Yep.
And then you can have armour, and you have weapons that go through armour.
There's also EMPs and EMP immune weapons, for example.
EMP can take down shields. It can disable some weapons. Lasers can, I believe, go through shields. Plasma weapons go through armour. So there's all these mechanical things that you don't necessarily know when you're not the person with the rulebook.
There's all the melee rules as well.
Yeah. And the problem with these systems is generally only one, or generally it's the person running the game has the rulebook, and they're the ones that understand all of this, and the players often don't. So in some ways, I think it can be better to use a system that's completely inappropriate, that everyone knows the system for.
Yeah.
Because then you can be light on the other stuff.
Yeah. And then you can maybe also collaborate on how the setting will fit in with the mechanics.
Having said that, you should all get Corporation. We love it, and they're a sponsor.
It's a good game. It is quite crunchy.
There's a poster of it right there that's signed.
Yes, it is quite crunchy, but it's good.
I don't think it's crunchy.
I think compared to 5th Ed, it is quite crunchy.
No.
Well, it is, because you've got various dice combos.
No. All your skill and action rolls are all 2d10 under a target value.
Yeah, to be fair, that's pretty strict.
The only other dice rolls in the game are damage.
I'm not really talking about the dice per se, but I'm talking about the things around it. Like you've got mashing damage, you've got hitting certain parts of the body.
There's some game mechanics to learn, just like there is with every other system.
Yes.
I never bothered to learn it properly. I mean, I read the book once a long time ago, and it was quite a long time before I then got to run again.
Interesting situation when I ran Corporation at the Expo once, and it was all for one group who do it, as in they do it in real life, and they all knew Corporation inside out. And I'm like, you've played before? Oh, you actually have played it many times before.
And know the rules.
Okay, I mean, yeah, I know the rules as well, majority of the time, but yeah, there's always something I miss.
I sort of know enough to love it. Doesn't matter, you can still run the game. You don't need to know the system well to run a game.
There you go, Phil has spoken.
Like D&D. There you go, there's your GM, Nathan. Go talk to each other. Fuke says, I wish I had the motivation to make videos.
I know the feeling.
It can be hard keeping a channel going for year on year on year.
This is why we decided to do streams for a lot of it, because yes, there's like making videos and stuff, but we just find as long as we set enough time for streaming, then obviously streaming works and you don't have to edit, which saves time.
Yeah, I love making those Pair of Geeks style miniature videos, but to find the time to do that now is so hard.
We both have full-time jobs and we do Complos and various other things, so yeah, it's hard. When I was off, yes, I had time to make videos, and lo and behold, now that I'm back at work, I hardly have any time. So yeah, I get, yeah.
Yeah, and the problem with YouTube now is YouTube is all about regularity. Doesn't matter how good your content is, you just got to be putting stuff out.
Yes.
Now we're trying to get into the habit now of doing a stream every week, which is hard to get an entire evening dedicated to a stream each week.
Yeah.
YouTube wants us to be out doing this every night, and we can't.
Yeah, no.
I love 13th Age.
Yeah, I've not played 13th Age. There are a few people I've seen on Facebook who are raving about it at the moment, but I've never gotten into 13th Age at all. Same with Legend of the Five Rings. I've never done that either.
Well,
I know they're not the same.
I'm quite happy to try different systems, and I like to homebrew actually from doing fantasy. Is not complex, and there's what I was going to say about all these different RPG systems is quite often what creates an RPG system is you've got somebody who has their idea of a good game mechanic, and they make an RPG system and put it out there and so on, and it doesn't necessarily really bring something new to the table just because you're rolling a dice in a different way and the list of skills available to you has slightly different wording, right? It doesn't massively change the game, and these things actually don't matter that much. And I think when creating a new system, authors of these systems need to be clearer about what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
One of the things, like we've interviewed a lot of people now in the industry who've written RPGs, and one of the things I always ask them is, what is your target market for this game? Who are you aiming this at? And almost all of them have exactly the same answer: role players. And it's like, we're not one group.
But
we're not one group.
What kind of role players?
Which segment? Even just a basic question like beginners to RPGs, or people tired of systems that have certain problems. When I did my After Forever After system, I wanted to solve two key things. I wanted to solve alpha gaming at the table. The system brilliantly solves that. You cannot alpha game in After Forever After. And I wanted more realistic weapons. I didn't want damage to go up because you're using a bigger weapon. I wanted the weapons to have a bit more character. I wanted you to be able to disarm with an axe. I wanted you to be able to, if you're on a horse and you charge somebody with a spear, good luck. And I created that, and that's what that system solves. But if you want a system that allows you to pirouette on top of a pole and kick 3 people at once in the same action, it's the wrong game, because it's not a superhero game or an acrobatics game or whatever. I was being a bit over the top there, but that's
I was going to say, I thought you were referring to Corporation again.
I could imagine a player doing that in Corporation and I'd have no problem with it, but you wouldn't do that in AFA.
No.
So you use the system for the tool, but so many RPG systems are getting created that really, bottom line, is 98% of them are generic, and they haven't been clear in their mind about the reasons why it was necessary to make a system.
This is why I think nowadays it's so oversaturated with the mechanics with the setting in order for it to be unique, because it's like, oh yeah, you can't really have this setting with other mechanics from other systems. It works with this. I know you can, but that's the way it's kind of dressed up, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and truthfully, we don't need rules for RPG systems. We've got a bookshelf of them right here that's just vaguely on camera, full of RPG systems. And I can run almost any game with almost any system here, at least the ones I've read anyway. So yeah, it's and so yes, I love RPG systems, and I love that there's so many available. But at the same time, why? So if you're thinking of writing an RPG system, be clear about the reasons why you're creating the system. Don't just make another generic. So Nathan says, awesome, thanks Phil. I'm in UST Pacific Standard Time based time zone. I played AD&D when it came out as well as the others.
Ooh.
More recently 5e, but I can roll with whichever version you use. Well, we are not in that time zone, so hope you're unemployed.
Yeah, I suppose it would be around midday start for you.
Yeah.
Because
Ronnie
Pacific's about 8
disagrees
hours.
with my last point. Ronnie says, I do find certain systems work well for certain genres better than others.
I think so too, in some ways.
There's
But
some truth to it.
there are still, in my opinion, so many systems I come across, say at conventions, where it's like, oh yes, there is this system and it's so unique because it works with this setting. It's like, no! Do something else!
It's true, but look. Right, Ronnie, we played in that corporation game together. We could have had exactly the same adventure if we'd used Cyberpunk, Shadowrun,
Yeah.
every
Fate.
other role-playing game that's been mentioned tonight, with the exception of D&D 5th. Because if we'd used D&D 5th, people would know the mechanics too well and expect certain roles.
Stuff, yes.
Right? The fact of the matter is, I barely used the corporation RPG. Gyjax himself said that if GMs ever clock on that they don't need the rulebook, then we're screwed. Right? Because the truth is you don't. Right? The job of the GM is to make up the rules that are needed and to arbitrate what rules you're using in any given circumstance. I sort of know the rules to corporation, but I just winged it. It's all you need. When he says, for example, whilst you can use True 20 for any genre, I find it really good for modern horror. Savage Worlds is good for pulp action and high octane, but not really suited to horror and dread. Now, I agree you can use the wrong system for something.
Yeah, me too.
Like, if you've got a crunch heavy system, you're not going to get a over-the-top, ridiculous, blasé type adventure like we have with Corporation. We couldn't have done it with Rollmaster. Yeah. Because we'd have had to have rolled on a critical table E79. And that kills the flow. So there are definitely, you can use the wrong tool for the job. But what if we did use Rollmaster for the corporation, and instead of looking up table E79, I just said, okay, you shoot him with the grenade launcher and the planet blows up. Because that's how over the top it was. But the point is, by not, it's how you apply the system is where the detail, what matters. So if you are using the square peg in the round hole, you're using the wrong system. It doesn't matter if you make it work by ignoring the bits that don't work for it. Ultimately, D&D 5th edition, if you look at the GM rulebook, it has rules in there for modern day.
It does. I think part of this, and I was thinking as well, I would never choose to use Fate for horror, for example. It's whether, say, the characters are larger than life, they're sort of high profile, or are they quite sort of small in significance and things like that.
Isn't suited to horror. It's a great example because the characters start off too high, too powerful. Yeah. Right? But you could absolutely make a 5th edition character that wasn't too powerful simply by ignoring half the stuff in the player's handbook.
Yes.
So it's not that you can't do it. We don't need a rule system to play a certain type of game. We can do it with any rule system. So if you're creating a rule system, my point is, be clear about what you want it to achieve. Speaking of equipment lists, I tend to judge a game system based on them. Isn't that awful? Like the menu to a restaurant, fried mushrooms please, and don't forget the rope ladder. There's merit to that, particularly in sci-fi. I think it's kind of less important in fantasy because most of those equipment lists are the same. Having said that,
yeah, they made all those kits.
Whether I finish the section and ever include it in AFA does have every single medieval profession ever documented, including the person that makes the rivets for saddles. I think. I think if you're sci-fi, I think that matters.
Yeah, I absolutely love the corporation equipment lists. I specifically love all the lists of like drugs and things.
Yeah, but you know what? You've got the same thing in Shadowrun and Cyberpunk.
Oh yeah, I agree. I'm not saying it's strictly corporation, but that was the one where I'm like, oh yeah, this actually is quite exciting. Whereas fantasy sort of lists.
I would say that's true of all sci-fi games. And I think where you would struggle more is where you're using the wrong system and don't have those equipment lists.
Yeah.
But having said that, I could quite easily take the equipment list from Corporation and use that in 5e.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have an issue with that.
Fair point. Time isn't the smee.
I don't know what you're saying on that one. Time isn't the same as motivation. True, we were this is talking about making videos.
The videos. Yeah, I mean that is one thing, in that I suppose if you think, oh, I haven't got time, it's not a good motivator. But yeah, again, I've also had low motivation to make videos too. So
it's about goals.
Yeah.
If you set yourself a goal, then you pursue that goal.
I guess the way that we sort of revive things a bit is we said, okay, our goal is to film something each week.
Yeah, well, no, the goal is to have a great convention. That's why we're doing this. It's to build the audience for the convention.
Yeah, but in terms of like video, production and content, we still wanted to have a video each week, and regularity was what we wanted to improve on.
That's the mechanism, but that wasn't the goal.
Well,
for me.
Yeah, maybe I think a bit more differently.
For me, the goal is to grow the channel so that we can raise more money for the Butterfly Project when we run the convention at the end of the year.
I think if you had a YouTube channel, your goal is by default going to be growing the channel.
Well, it wasn't for a long time with Parageeks. I just wanted to make the videos I wanted to make. I would never have considered going out every week like this in the old days of Parageeks. Because there are lots of people that will point a camera at themselves and talk to the camera and put it up on YouTube. And quite honestly, this kind of content, anyone can make it. It's just down to your personality, whether you catch on, and a bit of luck. Well, mostly luck in it, if I'm honest.
And adoring fans and patrons.
And what I was doing in the olden days of Parageeks was hard. Those are the kind of videos that are difficult to make. It takes a very long time to make a very short video, and there's skill required for different parts of that production process. And you can see, you look at an early POG video, it's not as good as later ones, and not as well researched. Like the Battle of Naseby video is I think quite a good video. But you look at my first videos on the channel, they're not as good. It's because I got better at that difficult job. But those videos don't build audience.
No. You can get the basic rules for 13th age free online. Awesome, but I'm not very good at reading things. I can read, but
we have a massive bookshelf of systems.
Yeah, I've hardly read any of them. It's terrible.
Yeah.
They gave the mechanics that plug easily into other systems too. Well, I'll certainly take a look. Definitely. Hello, John Lennon.
Hi, John. Returning. Systems should complement the genre and goal of the game, whatever combinations of combat and role-playing that might be.
Well, it's like we were saying, in that there you can have a wrong system for a setting. You can,
but my point on that is you could just take out the bits you don't want. Rules are so flexible. The GM's job is to choose the rules that apply in any given situation.
Remember, not everyone does things that way. They like to have a book in front of them. They like to have rules to follow. I'm not even talking about rules lawyers. I'm talking about maybe people who like to comply with with something, or they want to have a system of order in place.
Yeah, and you can argue it gets rid of disputes by having a definitive rule as written.
Yeah.
And I say, if you're going to be a lawyer at the table, then...
Well, again, I wasn't talking about lawyers specifically. I was thinking more of a GM who wants to run something within certain boundaries.
I'm not saying there isn't merit to that at all, and that isn't my point. My point is that it isn't necessary. Like, we have systems to fulfill all of these different purposes already, yet still more and more RPG systems are on Kickstarter every day.
Mm-hmm.
And still I keep talking to authors of RPGs, and they don't really know why they created their system.
Maybe because they like the setting, and if they put it with...
There was one exception, actually. Oliver Hume, who created the Elite Dangerous RPG.
I know you do like Elite Dangerous.
Well, no, I like the IP. I played it as a child.
Mm-hmm.
I have not actually played the RPG.
But he had a very good conversation with you about it.
Yes, we did have... It was a good interview, but one of the things he mentioned in that interview was he solved something with sci-fi RPGs that was a problem in other systems. And it was so refreshing to hear that, because so often... And it's sad that, actually, that the Elite RPG hasn't sold better in my mind.
Yeah.
Not that I've read it or played it, but, you know, he wrote that RPG to solve a problem. And specifically, it was the traveller problem of the pilot.
Yeah.
And I've ranted about pilots before in previous videos, that in Traveller, if you play the pilot, you only get to do something when you're moving from one planet to the next, which is essentially between campaign arcs. And you can't fail that role, because if you do, you've gone to the wrong part of the universe. It's ridiculous if like in the original Traveller. The new Mongoose edition, I think, is a lot better, because they've got rid of that stuff. But what Oliver did with Elite Dangerous is he changed it so that everyone in the group, every individual player in the group, has their own spaceship. You're all the pilot. So now you can have encounters in space that are meaningful, and you can upgrade your ship like it's a bit of equipment. And that is not just thematic for the Elite IP, it's brilliant. It solves that problem. But do you need to buy the Elite Dangerous RPG to do that? No. You can do that in anything, like 5e if you want. Go to space on the back of giant eagles. So
I've just envisaged giant eagles with like space helmets on.
Well, in the Brawlers campaign, giant eagles can fly into space. They don't need helmets. You can ride the back of them. You don't need a helmet. It's because the lack of atmosphere hasn't been discovered yet. Therefore, it doesn't kill you.
If follows what we're saying, there are a lot of games out there where the system is essentially arbitrary. In 5e, the system essentially just exists to sell books and supplements to the video game / cosplay generation.
It's not wrong.
No, it isn't. It's a very accessible system. It's obviously the most popular system. It's the one... If you talk about... If you say role-playing game or D&D, you know, people are going to know what that is more likely than if you talk about Fate or Shadows of Esteren. You know. Right, I'll let you guys talk amongst yourselves in terms of logistics for the game. Back on cities!
How do you prevent players, a few casts, from murder, loot, pillage, and burning everything?
Ah, yes.
Players! I've got a solution. It's to ban players from your games.
Yeah, there's a certain person in this chat who's been in a game of mine a few years ago where that happened. I mean, they didn't like the villagers because they nearly burnt somebody at the stake when they were innocent, which is fine. But they decided to just burn everything rather than, like, do the whole intrigue thing that I tried to do. This was when Ronnie played his Super Priest character in my Advanced Fighting Fantasy campaign.
Right. Well,
But yeah, it's a bit of a problem.
The reality, I do have a couple of tips. I don't know if there's really a good solution other than your players being on board session 0, yada yada yada, but there's a few other tips I can give that is outside of the normal generic advice that everyone gives in these situations. Firstly, whenever you finish a session, it is very tempting sometimes to finish just before a fight because you don't really want to go through all that dicing, right now. So you kind of postpone the fight until next session.
Yeah.
The problem with that is it starts your next session with a dice roll fest. And if you start an RPG session where you're just grinding through dice before you've got into the RP, that sets up your entire session to be dice based.
Yeah.
So try to avoid ending your sessions just before a combat encounter. No problem with a cliffhanger or an encounter that is climatic, but if it is a case of right, I'm going to roll for initiative, it's 9:30, then maybe in the interim, rather than thinking of right, roll for initiative, we'll get that encounter done, then we'll role play, think about how you can mix up that encounter into something more than just a combat. So that I think is the critical one, because if you can start the session with some good RP, then you're on for a win. But it can be difficult. I remember I live streamed a home game once, and after recounting the backstory, I was literally 2 words into the session when I got interrupted by a player, and that player then took us down this kind of very aggressively asserted and ended up in forcing me into combat. And there's only so much you can do, and I maybe could argue as a GM I could have maybe handled the player better, put them back in their place maybe, but ultimately you need your players to buy in, and having the players wanting the same thing helps. But even then, we play in a group ourselves that's online with some of the players on this stream, right? We are an RP centric group, but there are sessions that are better than others.
Yes.
There are days when I've got home from work and I'm not really in it. It happens, so not every session is going to be your best session, and it's okay. That's fine. Don't beat yourself up for it.
Yeah, but I get the point, especially with cities, where if you don't like something, or if you're kind of thinking, oh, there's something a bit funny about these NPCs, oh, let's just kill them or burn them, or as Ronnie mentioned earlier, NPCs as the hive of information and that's it. If they don't give you any information, then they're no use to you, type thing. It's annoying. So maybe what you could do to ease the players in is to start by having a faction or a city or whatever you want in that, have something that the players want, and that incentivizes them to see through that story arc in order to get that thing or that whatever, that experience.
The thing that I was going to raise there, I've completely forgotten while I was waiting for Jason to finish his point, so I'll go to the next question. Sorry. Ronnie says, I don't prevent them, Fuke, but they know that all their actions have consequences for good or ill, and any action they take could be dire.
Well, yeah, that's true as well. Don't be afraid to lay down the law, quite literally. If they start doing shit, then the NPCs therefore are gonna show consequences.
The other thing I think, to encourage your players to engage rather than cut their losses and burn the place down, is you've got to make sure that there are things for each player to do. This was the other point I wanted to raise. And one of the things I try to be most mindful of is, as a GM, I never used to do this at all. I never used to think about it. But these days I've started to try to think about distribution of time, like the spotlight time. And it's twofold, because it's not just about making sure that you as a GM engage the player and give that player the spotlight, but you've got to give that character actions worthy of taking.
In fact,
worthy actions.
Yeah, in fact, an easy way to do that, which encourages the players to sort of have more role-play elements in there as well, so it's a win-win. If they put something in, say, a character background that you can easily put into your city or whatever, and it becomes a story arc, you know, they're going to love that. Everybody loves it. If your background suddenly comes up and you have to sort it out, it's like one of the easiest things to do.
Yeah, data mining backgrounds.
Yeah.
But the problem that can occur when if you're taking from characters' backgrounds is quite often you'll either have one person in the group who's really good at writing backgrounds.
Yes.
Or has the most sort of complex and involved type thing.
Yeah.
Or you're going through an arc that is very much focused on one character's background.
Yes, that's true, and then the others are kind of out of the picture.
You've got to, as a GM, make sure that even if the situation has unfolded such that the action is focused on one or two characters, whilst they're doing that, you've got to make sure that something happens for the others, even if you cheat and throw in a little fight.
Yeah. I've got a little sort of mental plan for that, in that, say, that there's maybe a couple of background things of characters I can play with and others there aren't. It's almost like kind of old story arcs versus new story arcs, or past and present. So I think, okay, these characters, there's something from their past going on, whereas these ones, it's the present that's affecting them, and blah blah blah. And
here's an exercise you can do as a GM, right, that will help in making sure you split your spotlight, right? And that is not to have, like, at its most basic level, don't ever get the same character to do a skills test twice in a row. So if somebody does a skill test, make sure it's somebody else next. And then, once you master that, try to make sure that everybody does the same number of skill tests through a session. Because if you're doing that, you're probably sharing your spotlight.
Yeah.
And it's not a perfect way of summing it up, but what it prevents is, like, where you've got that action scene that happens to one character. Like, one character's going off doing something and does a few things, meanwhile the other character is sleeping. Like, let's say that they have the character has literally said, I go to sleep, right? And you've got this other character that goes out and is going to recon the base you're going to raid tomorrow, like the guild house that you're going to burgle the next day, and they're doing that alone while the rest of the party sleeps, right? I will still manage to balance out the skill rolls, right? And I will do it because shit goes down where they're sleeping, and I will do that because that player went off on their own. Because I won't have that player having that spotlight all to themselves. You've got to spread it out.
Yes.
So I will introduce bad guys if I have to.
The chat here is awesome. Yes, it is. It's very good tonight. Keep it up.
You guys are awesome. That's what makes the channel
exactly.
Awesome. Okay,
more
so
logistics,
Nathan and Phil talking about getting a game going.
Yeah.
Lots of good sci-fi games out there, says Ronnie. For running Elite, and there are 2 official RPGs for Elite, Elite Dangerous and Elite Encounters. Well, I spoke to Oliver Hume, who was the author of Elite Dangerous. I haven't come across Elite Encounters. Don't know who wrote it.
What if they did a mashup and it became Elite Dangerous Encounters?
I have nothing to add to that conversation.
Yes, exactly.
Super Priest.
For those of you who don't know who Super Priest was, basically with the Advanced Fighting Fantasy rules, it's a bit ambiguous as to how often you should let your players advance. It's not like a level system, but you can buy skill points or stamina points and whatever. It just said once per adventure, which it's like, well, what does that mean? Session? Does it mean like an adventure story arc? What does it mean?
I would interpret that as story arc.
Yeah.
I take it you didn't.
Well, I sort of did and I sort of didn't. I did it with maybe smaller adventures. But basically, Ronnie's character maxed out on all 3 attributes, skill, stamina and luck. So he could automatically pass various roles and it became pointless, so we called it Super Priest. I wanted to laugh and cringe at the same time when I heard Super Priest. Well, he was Super Priest. Yes, it got very powerful very fast due to how the way the system worked, yes. Super Priest reminds me of my semi-pacifist. You're semi-pacifist? What, as in a character you've made up? Do tell. If I ever have another rescued cat that is untraceable and destroys everything, I will name him Super Priest. And the strange thing is, he was a priest of peace, but could smack people without much effort. Yes, he could. I can't remember what weapon he had, like a club or something. Yes.
Right. It is now, for us here in nighttime, this town we're in, it is now 10 to 10.
It is.
That, sadly, means I want to go to bed.
Yeah, we're 9 to 5 monotonous workers, so we feel tired at 10 to 10.
Yeah, because 10 o'clock is kind of when I go to bed now, because I'm old.
We're not nerds. We don't stay up until 2 in the morning.
That I used to. I used to be such a night owl, and now I wake up at 6:30. I can't help it.
John, the semi-pacifist, only ever shield bashed people.
Yeah, I can dig that as a character.
That's key. I like that. I like that very much. Oh, he had a staff. Oh, yeah, of course, because priest. What's the best way to destroy a city if you are not in a corporation game?
Well, I think Daenerys Targaryen has that covered with a Drogon.
Just for people who've never played Corporation before, that is not a staple thing of the game. That is just our campaign and our joke because we destroyed cities.
I don't know where you're getting this from. I can't think of a single city you destroyed. You did, however, destroy several countries. You destroyed an entire region of India.
I remember running thousands of people over in a sports car.
That was in India, wasn't it?
It was either India or
that was when
Shanghai or something.
No, I think it was India just before the Sydney Opera House caught up with you.
Yes, and you were like, oh yeah, there's all these crowds of people, and it's like, okay, fine, I'll run them over there.
Because it's a densely populated place. I wanted to bring that through.
But we need to get to Sydney Opera House to run them over, because my character was unbelievably cutthroat and horrible.
In that retelling there, yes, Sydney Opera House was mobile. That's because there were surfer dude aliens who spoke like Bill and Ted's dialect.
Yeah, it was like a mix between the aliens from Toy Story 2 and Bill and Ted. Yeah, that's what it reminded me of.
And the Sydney Opera House was their spaceship. It makes perfect sense.
Most non-bogus. Meteor spells.
Yeah, that would do. Sorry, we didn't really answer Phil's question. Good ways to destroy a city.
Oh yes, yeah.
Now, if I was, well, it depends what resources have we got. What are our limitations here? Because if you just want to destroy a city, it can be earthquake, could be
exactly, or
could be
famine, products of the environment,
could just be environmental.
Flooding, yeah.
There's the ice caps melted.
Yeah.
So what are our constraints here? What are the tools that I can misuse? Am I the queen of a nearby nation and I want to overturn this city?
May I bring up Clockwork Opera quickly about that?
Yes.
Because the city wasn't destroyed, but because of how tension was rising and more people were combating against whatever the hell she was called, and her ilk, things were destroyed. It was inevitable.
I know how I would destroy a city.
How?
I can answer Phil's question now. I would unleash player characters. The ultimate destructive force in the universe.
We've gone full circle.
No worries, Nathan.
Thank you
for watching.
Yes. London. What?
Yes, no, London got destroyed. Something fell
on it.
Yeah. Wasn't it?
We did a race with the princess and Hitler.
And the
future queen.
Princess Elizabeth, the future queen of England, and Hitler had a race in an airship from the moon to London.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a thing. And London did get destroyed for some reason. I think it's because the ships you were flying were bombs, thorium, nuclear.
I can't remember
explosions.
The details.
No,
yes.
I'd have to rewatch the campaign. So thank you for we're on the British side of the pond. Is where we're from.
If you're talking about everybody, whichever side of the pond.
Oh, I see. Sorry, I'm being too literal. Yes,
and yes, we did indeed. So look, London.
Thank you for watching. If you're listening on Podbean, thank you for listening. This will take a couple of days to go up on
Podbean. Yep, because I'm an audiophile and like to twiddle with sound.
Yes, so I did the last one and I got in trouble.
Because you loaded it without me able to listen to it, and okay, it's alright, but I want to tweak it. So
yeah, because it was our last week we used this microphone for the first time, the Rode mic, which I've now built a boom for. By dismantling.
It's nice, but it's got a hiss.
There is a hiss. Don't know
which
why.
We're trying to fix.
So
it was so weird because we have loads of audio controls, different sources, and nothing was changing anything, which was really strange.
So I know it could just be a cable. I mean, you never know these things.
Yeah, it could be. So yeah, we need to use that.
Yes,
but anyway,
investigation required. So thank you so much. Bye, Scott.
Bye.
Wait, you know what? There's. I think we just need to hit the end stream. We will never catch up with the.
Yes, that's very true. All right. Well, thanks very much,
you.
everybody. So bye.
Bye.